Hello, and welcome to the tutorial How to Create a Custom Level in Sonic Adventure 2. Before we start, I just want to give a big thanks to the X-Hax team and their tools for making all this possible. And if you would like to create a mod for Sonic Adventure 2 or get lost during any part of the tutorial, please join their Discord, which I have linked in the description down below, and feel free to ask questions there. Before we start, make sure that you have everything that's linked in the description downloaded and installed into your computer. Namely, you're going to need a version of Blender that's 4.0 or higher, an installation of Sonic Adventure 2 and the Sonic Adventure 2 mod loader. You're going to need the Sonic Adventure Blender I/O add-on, the SA Tools Hub app, and you're going to need My Level Mod, which we'll be using to import our level into Sonic Adventure 2. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is to prepare the textures that we would like to use for our level. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and enter into the SA Tools Hub. And this Tools Hub is actually a suite of multiple apps that can be used to mod both Sonic Adventure 1 and Sonic Adventure 2. And if you take a look on the right-hand side here, you can actually see a couple of these apps. The first one is SA Model, and that's used for creating and importing custom models into Sonic Adventure. The second one is SA Level, which actually has to do with configuring custom levels, although this is a simple tutorial, so we won't be needing it for today. And this third one, which we are interested in, is the Texture Pack Editor. So go ahead and open up the Texture Pack Editor. And from here, we have two main options for creating a texture pack for our level. The first option is creating a brand new one from scratch, and you can do that by hitting this Add button in the bottom left. And from here, you can add all the PNGs and JPEGs that you would like to use for your level. And you can just go ahead and add a whole bunch, add 15, 20. And once you're good there, we'll go on to the next step. But for this tutorial is going to be a little simpler. So I'd actually like to reuse a texture pack that's already in the game. To be more specific, I would like to use Cityscapes textures. So to do that, I'm going to go to the top left here over to File, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Open. And here I already have a shortcut to my Sonic Adventure 2 installation, but in case you need a reminder where it is, it should be in Program Files. Then you would go to Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Sonic Adventure 2, and then in the Sonic Adventure 2 folder, you would go to Resource and GDPC. And this GDPC folder is actually super important. It holds a lot of the really important resources that the game uses. So once you find that folder, just scroll down until you see these files called, here they are, LandTex. And these files are actually the texture packs that are used for each individual level. And so you might be wondering, okay, then if they're the texture packs for the levels, why doesn't it say, okay, LandTex Cityscape or LandTex Skyrail? Well, the reason behind that is that Sonic Adventure 2 actually sets an ID for every single level. So what I'm going to do is down in the description, there'll be a link to all the levels and their IDs. So in case you're interested in using an existing texture pack, feel free to look at that link. And so for my case, since I would like to use Cityscape, Cityscape has an ID of 13. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this LandTex 13 to open up Cityscape's texture pack. And as I click through, I can see here are all the images. Everything is looking nice. And as I'm clicking through, I want you to notice here on the top right here, there is this field called index. So you might be wondering, okay, what is that for? Well, not only does Sonic Adventure 2 set a specific ID for every level in the game, but the way that Sonic Adventure 2 handles textures is that each texture also has an ID, known as the index. And this index is actually what we're going to be using later on in the tutorial to set the textures that we would like to use for each individual mesh. So just wanted to point that out here. That number is going to be important for later. So I've looked through my texture pack, and once I'm good and satisfied with it, we can now get ready to save it and export it so that we can use it in both Blender and in our level. So to do that, I'm going to have to save this in two different ways. The first way is I have to save this as a texture pack for our level. So the way I'm going to do that is over in File. I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I actually want to select Pack here. And I know there's a whole bunch of different options here, but some of these options actually restrict the resolutions. So for example, I know some of these, the resolutions have to be divisible by, I believe, 2 or 16 or something like that. But Pack doesn't have these restrictions. Pack is super easy to work with. So I'm just going to save this as a Pack for now. And I'm going to go over, I made this tutorial folder. All the files I'm going to be working with is just going to be in this folder for today. And so I'm just going to save it as the name it was before, LandText13. And now I'm going to export it now so that I can use it in Blender. And so the way that I'm going to do that is over in File again. I'm going to go to File, and this time I'm going to go to Export Texture Pack. And I want you to notice this time it's actually going to save as a folder. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to name this Cityscape Textures so I don't forget. And if I look and see what it saved, I can see now all the textures now are PNGs and you know, JPEGs that are easy to work with. And they also save this index.txt file, and this keeps track of each texture and what their index is. And so a little later on in Blender, we're gonna use that. So with that out of the way, we're now done with the texture pack. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out the texture pack editor in SA Tools. And now we can go ahead and jump right into Blender. So I already have a Blender file I'd like to work with, a simple tutorial level. But before I jump into that, I'm actually going to go ahead and make sure that we have the add-on installed properly. So one way that you can do that is if you go over to this Edit menu on the top left, and you go to Preferences, and then you look for the Add-ons tab. Mine is already selected, but if it's not, go ahead and select it. And then go to the search bar and type in Sonic. And you should see, if it's installed properly, the Sonic Adventure IO add-on. If not, all you have to do is hit this Install button over here, go to wherever you saved your Sonic Adventure Blender IO zip file that you downloaded, and click it, and then hit Install Add-on. And then everything should work great. As long as you've got this checkbox clicked, and you're seeing all this, then you should be good to go. Something also worth noting is that the add-ons are capable of updating themselves, so every so often just go ahead and click this check now for SAIO update. You never know what features or bug fixes you might be missing out on. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into our tutorial level. So this is a small level that I created just to play around with and show you guys a little bit of the ropes here. One thing I do want to note is that even though this isn't a Blender tutorial and I won't be going over the basics of Blender, I will be kind of pointing out some basic things here and there, you know, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And I'm also going to be working with this custom level that I made, but in case you want to, say, download a map from the internet and use that, that is also perfectly okay too. In fact, I might have a subsequent tutorial where I go over that because the process is actually just a tiny bit easier when you do that. So now that I'm in my level here, and you know, when you open up Blender, you know, this is the part where you can now start creating your level, start adding in these meshes and doing whatever you'd like. But once you're finally done with your level and you say, okay, this is nice, and now I want to get it ready for Sonic Adventure 2, here are the main steps that we have to take. The first step is that we have to scale our level. Oftentimes, especially from maps that are downloaded from the internet, the maps are either way too small or way too big compared to Sonic. And so this step is actually very important in making sure that your level feels natural and that your level feels good to play on. And so two ways that we can scale the level properly. And I'm going to go with method number 2, but I'm going to show you method number 1 because I think method number 1 is also pretty useful. Is that if you go back to the SA Tools Hub and you create a project, what that's going to do is it's going to rip out some of the game files for you to use. And it's also going to rip out the models that the game uses. And one of those models is Sonic's model himself. And so one simple way to scale your level is you can actually import Sonic himself by going to File, Import, SAIO Formats, and then you can go ahead and click this Sonic Adventure Model option right here, and then you can go ahead and find Sonic's model and then import him into the level, and then you can scale the level around him. Although since this tutorial is pretty simple, I'm going to go instead for option 2. And what I like to do to scale the level is I actually like to create a cube, and I like to kind of size that and pretend that that's Sonic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this cube up a little bit. And in case you're wondering, when it comes to Blender, Sonic is about 3 Blender units wide by 3 Blender units long and 5 Blender units high. And I'm also going to move him up 5 Blender units so that he's flush with the ground. And so now that we have this box that kind of represents Sonic, now I can choose, all right, I'm going to go ahead and select my whole level by hitting A on my keyboard. I'm going to hold Control and click on Sonic so that Sonic is not selected. And from here, I can go ahead and hit S on my keyboard. That way I can make the level smaller or bigger. And once I find a size that I think, okay, this is good now, I can go ahead and stay with that. For now, I kind of like the size that my original level was, so I'm just going to keep it at that. But again, feel free to play around with it until you think it looks good. Once you're done scaling your level, now it's time to texture our level. So what we're now going to do is we're going to tell Blender that we're working with a Sonic Adventure level here. And so the way that we're going to do that is if you hit N on your keyboard, you should see all these tabs come up. And actually, before we tell the Blender that we're working with a level here, so one nice tip that I like to share is that if you go to this View tab, normally in Blender, this end field is set to 1000. That's the view distance. And typically Sonic Adventure levels are pretty big, and so you notice if I scroll out here, some things start to get cut out here. So something I like doing, I like raising this up by adding a couple of zeros. That way you've got a lot of space to work with. So I definitely recommend changing that if you can. But once you hit N on your keyboard, we're going to go ahead and go into the SAIO Scene tab over here. And if you look, settings should be open. I already have some basic things filled out here. This is optional. But something that's not optional, that is very important, is this scene type. You're going to want to go ahead and select the scene type and change it from model to land table. And that will enable some tools that we can use to then start working with levels and setting collision a little later on. So that tells Blender that we're now working with a Sonic Adventure level. Now then, to set textures, what we can go ahead and do is open up this textures section over here, and I'm going to create a new material by hitting New over here. New texture list. And then in the bottom right corner over here, you're going to see this arrow. Go ahead and click that arrow, and you should see this menu pop up, and you're going to want to hit Import Texture Pack. And here is where we go back to that original folder that we created, and you're going to want to import this index.txt file. So I'm going to go ahead, import that. Blender is going to take a second, but once it does, you should now see that Blender has all these textures loaded. And in case you're curious, on the left, this is that index that we were talking about earlier. We're going to use that to set our textures just a little bit later. And in the middle over here, this is the file name. And so something that I really like to use when I am trying to set a texture for myself is I like going into that folder, and then I can find one of these textures that I like, say for instance this texture right here, and I look at the name. I look at SCity12824, and if I want to use that particular texture, I go ahead and I try to find it, SCity12824, and then I find the ID, and then I plug that in. So the ID here is 21. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to texture my ground. And for my ground, I kind of want it to be a little outdoorsy, so I want to set it to something that's kind of like grass. So I'm going to look around for a grass texture in here. Here we are. This one is SCity12822. So I'm going to go ahead and go through my list. Okay, SCity12822, and that was fast. And I notice here that the ID is 19. So remember that number 19. And to set the texture, we're going to go ahead and go to the right over here. And you're going to want to go to the Material Properties menu over here. Once you're in the Material Properties menu, go ahead and create a new material by hitting this New button. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and close some of these other tabs. what we're interested in is this SAIO Material Properties tab. So go ahead and open that. And you're also going to want to open up this Texture Properties section. And with that open, go ahead and enable Use Texture here. And for this texture ID, this is that ID that we were talking about earlier. So in this case, I want to use 19. That's for the grass texture. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 19 here. And once you do that, go ahead and hit Update Properties. And now that should make sure that this material now uses that texture from our texture list. Now, in case you don't see it, that just means that you have to enable textures for your Blender scene. So the way you can do that is on the top right over here, we can see all the different view modes. I'm going to go ahead and click this arrow to open it up. And under color, I'm going to hit texture. And so now you can see, yeah, our plane is using our grass texture. It's a little low resolution right now. We're going to go over how to fix that in a little bit. But now I'm going to go ahead and texture the rest of the meshes in our level. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of these cubes. And I think for the cubes, I want to choose something that's a little more cementy. Something like this, but without the line. Let me see. Do we have that? That one's more road. Oh, this one. This one's a pretty good one. S-City 6427. So I'm going to have to go look through our list. S-City 6427. Here we are. Okay, and that's ID 87. So I'm going to go ahead and hit New here again. And then back in the SIO Material Properties, use Texture 87, Update Properties, and there we go. Our cube is now using that texture. Now that we've created a texture already, something really nice that we can do is we don't have to make a new material every time. If there's a texture that we want to repeat, so let's say I want to use the same texture for this cube, I can actually hit this sphere instead to show all the materials I have. And I'm just going to go ahead and select the material that had the concrete from earlier. And that's going to be how we're going to set our textures a little faster once we've created a material that we like. So now all of our cubes are done. And now it's on to this ramp here. Now, for this ramp, I actually have a very specific texture in mind, and I'm going to show you guys why in a little bit. This S-City 12824, that one's a good one. So S-City 128, right? 12824, right? Yeah, 12824. Here it is. That's number 21. Okay, so I don't have a material that uses texture 21, so I'm going to have to make a new one. I'm going to go ahead and put 21, update properties. And there we go. Now our ramp has that texture. So typically that's the way I like setting textures. I believe there's also another way to set textures. If you go into the SAIO Tools menu and you go to this Material Mask Edit, you can also use this to set the textures if you're working with tons of different meshes. So let's say I wanted to set all the meshes to one specific texture. I can go into this Material Mask Editor, and then under Texture Properties, I enable Use Texture, Texture ID, and here I can set a number. So let's say I wanted to make all of them 21. I can go ahead and hit Apply All. Then in Material, I do Update Material Properties, and then I hit OK, and I should be all, right? That doesn't seem to be working. Oh, okay. Update material textures must have been. Okay. So that's another way that you can do it. This add-on is still pretty new, so I'm not a super expert when it comes to all these things. But there we go. Now that is properly set. Let me just double check. Yep, that's 21. Okay, good. So now that all of our textures are set, now we're going to try to fix all these low resolution textures here. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to do something known as UV mapping. And what that means is we're going to tell the game exactly how we want our textures to be used for our meshes. So on the top here, you're going to want to go to the UV editing tab. And here you'll see a view of our level as well as the view of the specific texture that we would like to edit, or UV map in this case. And because we don't see the textures, I think we're going to have to update the viewport again. So I'm just going to go ahead and enable texture there. And with texture enabled, I'm going to go ahead and select all these points over here to select the texture. And over here, something cool I can do is if I hit S on my keyboard and move my mouse, I can scale the texture for our mesh. And that way, now you can see our texture is starting to repeat. And so now we have more of a high resolution feel to it because our texture isn't spanning the entire mesh. So I'm going to scale this up until I feel good with it. I think that's good. And so as you can see already, our textures are looking a little nicer. So that's the floor done. And now I'm also going to work with these cubes now. So I'm going to go back into the layout tab, click on my cube, go to UV editing. And here we can see, okay, now that we're working with a cube, on the left here, we have a lot more than 4 points. And this means that, for any specific one of these sides, I can also just edit one specific side, not edit all the others. But instead what I'm going to do, I'm still going to do the same thing. I'm going to select all the sides of this cube, and I'm going to hit S, and I'm going to scale up my texture until I feel like it's good. So that looks about fine. I'm not too picky about that. Now I'm going to do this cube. I'm going to scale this one up just a tad, just so we get, some of that cement texture out, And this cube is a little smaller. You can't really tell the difference, but I'm still going to scale this one anyways, just to make me feel good. And so now we have all these cubes now using this cement texture, and now everything is all UV mapped and it looks a little nicer. Well, now I want to show you something cool that I want to do with this ramp. A little use case showing off some advanced UV mapping. And so in particular, you see how this ramp has a stripe on the side? Well, something I want to do is I actually want to put this stripe at the edge of the ramp right here, just to kind of show off to players, okay, if you want the maximum height, I want you to jump at around this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this ramp, go into UV editing again, and the first thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to select all these points, and I want to try to remove that stripe from the side. So I'm going to hit G on my keyboard to translate these points, and I'm just going to move them away from the line. That way, none of the sides should have that stripe. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top side of my ramp here, and here I want to try to bring the stripe back in. So I'm going to translate my points again. So now we can see this stripe here, but right now it's vertical, and I want to make it horizontal. So I'm going to hit R on my keyboard now to rotate this, and I can hit Control on my keyboard to lock it to degrees of 5. And so I'm going to bring it over to 90. I'm going to click so that gets saved. I'm going to scale this a little bit, translate it. And so now, just like that, my ramp has that line that's at the end. Of course, I still want to probably make all of the textures just a little bigger so that we get a nicer resolution. So I'm going to scale this up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to select this over here just so I can fix this texture a little bit. There we go. Ah, see, that's nice. This still has a stripe on the side, but I'm not going to be too picky for today. And so now our ramp has this cool little stripe at the edge. So now that we've scaled our level and we've textured it and we've even done some advanced texture work, now what we want to do is we want to set the collision for our level. And so by default, everything is just visible. It's not very collidable. So to make everything collidable, we're going to hit N on our keyboard, and we want to go to this SAIO object tab. And here you're going to want to open up the land entry section. And then in land entry, you want to open up surface attributes. And here you can see all the different flags that we can set for our meshes. And you can see there's tons of options here. For example, if something is diggable, if something counts as stairs. I know this says water here. I believe water is a little more complicated though. But to set our collisions, we basically want to set this solid button to true. But since I want to do this for all of my meshes, I'm going to go ahead and select all my meshes with A. And here, this is very important. If you want to set the surface attribute for multiple meshes, go ahead and hold Alt on your keyboard. And as you're holding Alt, then enable solid. And that will enable solid for all these meshes. So if I go through, you'll see solid, 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 which is great. Okay? So with that out of the way, now our level has been scaled, it's been textured, our collisions have been set. What's left to do? Well, there's only 2 more steps left. The first thing that I want to do is when you're working with your level, you want to make sure that nothing is kind of overlapping. For these cubes, for instance, since cubes are pretty simple, things overlapping that are in the shape of a cube or simple shapes, shouldn't be a problem. But for this ramp, I want you to notice that this ramp has a bottom side that's colliding with this plane here. And so when Sonic goes to hit this ramp, I believe the SA2 engine is actually going to get a little confused as to which side should get priority. So something I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and enter this ramp into edit mode. And I'm going to go ahead and select this face. So on the top left, you can choose either vertex mode, edge mode, or face mode. I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to select this bottom face of our ramp, and I'm just going to hit the delete key. I'm going to hit delete face. And that way, now this ramp doesn't have a side that's overlapping with the plane. So that'll make it a lot easier for the SA2 engine to handle. And so now this plane, this ramp should be a little easier for the engine to work with. And so with that out of the way, there's only one more step left to do. Go ahead and select all your meshes, and once you're ready to export your level to Sonic Adventure 2, go ahead and hit Control A on your keyboard, and you're going to want to apply scale. And now what this will do is, once you've scaled something in Blender, that's also something that can confuse the Sonic Adventure 2 engine. So by applying scale, it just makes all these scales that you've done something that's constant. So if I go into properties, you'll see all these are 1s now. So it just makes it easier for the Sonic Adventure 2 engine to handle. But with that done, we can now export our level. So to do that, go to the top left over to File. You're going to want to go to File, Export, SAIO formats, and you're going to want to go into SA2B land table. And so I'm going to go ahead and click that, and you can see the name is tutorial here. But yeah, you know what? Tutorial is fine. I'm going to keep that as tutorial. And you can also save your Blender file here, but for me, I don't want to do that right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out my Blender. And now that we have the SA2 battle level file and the pack file that I'd like to use, go ahead and put both of those into your My Level Mod folder. And so doing that should have copied these two. And from here, what you can do is the My Level Mod is pretty smart. It'll automatically put these files where they belong, though it will crash on the first time when it does this. But for the sake of time, I'm going to put these files actually where they belong. So I'm going to move all of these to the GDPC folder. And then from there, I'm going to move our pack file into this PRS folder. And so with that done, now all the files are in its proper place. And the last thing to do is to run the mod manager and play our level. And so you'll see here I have My Level Mod enabled. If you don't have that enabled, go ahead and enable it. Then go to this debug menu. And from here, you can actually load directly into your level. So I have City Escape selected here, but you can select any level that you'd like. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the play button. And what we should see here is our custom level. And so here we are. And we can see the ramp is working, and we can see the cubes are working. And I know there was a ring in the middle. This tutorial doesn't really go over how to add enemies and rings to your level. That's going to be in a separate tutorial. But yeah, this is some of the basics on how to add a custom level to Sonic Adventure 2. One last thing I do want to show off is that if you would like to add some custom features to your level, My Level Mod actually has support for some basic things. So for example, if you'd like to change the spawn coordinates, you can go ahead and change them there. So let's say I wanted Sonic to spawn maybe 10 units up or 10 units to the left or right. I can click any one of these. If I wanted to replace a specific level other than City Escape, I would change this number from 13 to the level ID that I would want. Again, level IDs will be linked in the description down below. And this other one too, by default, if you jump off, Sonic will be falling forever. And so if you want, there's this option here called Simple Death Plane. That'll automatically kill Sonic under a certain Y level. So if I set that to -15 and jump back into my level, we should see Sonic dying as soon as he jumps off. So I'm going to go ahead and load him into my level again just to show that off. I'm going to go ahead and jump off here. And you should see, yeah, we die and we lose a life. Though it looks like -15 is actually pretty close. I might want to lower that later. But yeah, that's the tutorial. That's how you create a custom level in Sonic Adventure 2. Thank you guys for watching. and I hope you enjoy creating your own level. Take care.